plan, it begins with having a vision, but it also begins with establishing where you are at the moment. So if you do not even know where you are, you're not going to know how to get to where you want to be. So first you start with building your vision, and then you establish where you are, and then you look at the gap between where you're going and where you are, and then you identify the resources you need to take you to where you're going. So after you've done, the long-term plan, now you do your strategy, your short-term tactical plan. You've identified where you're going, you know where you are, you know the resources that you're going to need to get there. But then what do I need to do every day? What is this thing I need to do every day? What is this thing I need to do every month? What is this thing I need to do every quarter? And finally, what is this thing I need to do every year to ensure that I get to where I am going? So you build a short-term plan with the long-term plan in mind. For example, I want my kids to go to private school in 5 years. It's going to cost me, I take a number, $200,000 to send my kids to private school. What does that mean in the short term? That means how much do I need to save? How much more money do I need to make? My current source of income, is it going to get me to where I'm going? If not, what is this other thing I can do? So if you find that it even makes you to be creative, because it's like, okay, if I have a job that pays me X and S amount, if I have to spend so and so every month, if I have to save so and so every month, I think you can achieve by yourself. So when you've done your long-term plan, you've done your short-term, we all try to encourage investments, but then you are not just going to get up and start investing, right? In a year, what I do, for example, is, I project my income for the entire year. And that's, based on the fact that I have a long-term plan, then I've made a short-term plan, and now I'm budgeting. So I project my income for an entire year. I project my expenses for an entire year. And I project my savings for the year. Okay, how much money, based on my level of income, how much money do I want to save? But then I don't also want to get so comfortable. I want to push myself a little bit. Okay, what can I do to ensure to generate multiple streams of income so I can save more? From the income I'm making, how much do I want to invest? Because, it's nice to have a plan for investment so that you're not also investing out of the blue. It's true that opportunities can come, but at least have a budget at the beginning of the year. But what is it you're going to keep aside for your investments? What is it you're going to keep aside for your savings? What is it you're going to keep aside for your expenses? So having that budget kind of gives you an advantage, because then you're not hit by surprises. And another thing about budgeting is, I'm sure most of us know about having an emergency fund, because guess what? Things are going to happen. Things that you did not plan for are going to happen. We don't like it, but you might lose somebody. You might have a friend that loses somebody. You can experience a shock at your job and you're laid off. So you need to have an emergency budget, an emergency fund. And you can budget towards your emergency fund based on my knowns right now, based on what I'm making right now. How much money do I want to put into my emergency fund every month? So that if somebody calls me in the middle of the year for something that is urgent, I don't need to go into my savings. I don't need to halt my investment plans, but then I have an emergency fund that I can go into to take money from, to invest to sow into these urgencies that can come up. Another thing that's really important is having a contingency plan. Sometimes we budget, but then stuff happens, right? Stuff happens and your plan will not always go like you wanted it to. It's very unlikely that your plan goes the way you want it to. So, you should have a contingency plan. A contingency plan could be your plan B. You could have a plan B, and it's okay to have a plan C. Remember not to get too old. See how you can translate your contingency plan into numbers. For example, I plan to do an investment in a piece of land that is projected to cost about $100,000 or $50,000. I have a contingency plan will be, what if that doesn't go well? What if the person decides to sell higher? What if their other competitors are willing to give higher? What is the value of that land? So my contingency plan will be, okay, if that doesn't go well, I can do this. Maybe I choose not to invest in the land. I can have something else that I choose to invest in. I can have a buffer to go up, to go higher, or I could choose to do something completely different, but build a contingency plan. Do not rely on the plan A only. So we've talked about, strategic planning. We've talked about tactical planning. We've talked about budgeting. Now we come to analyzing. So planning is one thing. You've planned, you've created a budget. You now know what you want to do. Now you need to take time to monitor, to track, and to control. And two words, a very wise person said to me, $1 on all of my, minor expenses. Every month now I track, it can seem burdensome to track your expenses, but then I can assure you that tracking your expenses as part of financial planning and analysis has long-term benefits for you. So you track your expenses, you monitor your expenses, and you control your expenses. There are things that happen in the example. I had planned that I'm going to spend $1,500 on all of my utilities. But then if I look at the state of the economy, I see that prices are rising. Gas prices are going up. At the beginning of the year, my plan was to spend $500, but because I'm tracking my expenses, by the time I get to January or February or March, I realize that, oh, I'm spending more. Why am I spending more? Is it because of my personal spending habits, or is it because of something that's happening that's out of my control? So something in the external, right? I need to think about these external factors and how they affect your plan, and then adjust your plan. So in planning, you have to be ready to pivot at every moment, because, the truth is things are not going to always go the way you want. So how can I pivot? How do I change that plan? And then one thing you need to do also is take note of wastage. When you're tracking your expenses, it helps you to identify where are the waste areas. So let's say you're looking at your bank statement at the end of the month, analyzing your expenses and tracking, you're looking at your bank statement, and you see, I have all of these subscriptions that I'm not even using. You need to make sure that you're not building castles in the air, right? So that's why your goals must be smart, because it stands with my reality. But then not forgetting to challenge myself to go beyond that. And challenging myself means that, okay, if I want to make more, it just means that I can probably do more. There are things that I can do. I can start a small business, and I can, also ensure that I have balance. Starting a small business, but then not jeopardizing the quality of my life. Always ensure that I'm creating balance so that, I'm prospering. We want to, the Richer Woman is all about, it's about financial planning. If we work fervently and we believe in a plan and we take action, then we're probably most likely going to succeed. Thank you very, very much for having me. It's been an honor.
What we do not understand, we will stigmatize.
What you can see is the remaining of the tanker that exploded.
The suspect equally confessed.
A 500 naira they collect them.
If you no talk, then go beat you.
Now 2,500 they pay.
Hey, what's up, guys? You're welcome to another edition of Plus Event, and I remain your host, Ifeoluwa Oshukeye.
Your absence isn't an excuse anymore, as Plus Events is all you need, as we bring you the glitz, the glamour, and loads of fun.
Oh, definitely, right? No question.
Of doing it.
You're watching
Plus Event on Plus TV.
Stay glued to Plus TV Africa every Saturday and Sunday, 4:30 p.m. West African time.
Hello and welcome to Space and Staff, a property show designed to connect various stakeholders across the property value chain. We can also provide realistic solutions and deepen your knowledge about the interesting world of real estate. We shall showcase architecture of real estate.